Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst radio network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at ArtistFirst.com. Please send your questions and comments to dj@ArtistFirst.com. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here they are, Mike and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Z-Man, and I'm Michael Lyons.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Margaret.
And I'm pretty depressed about it.
Oh.
Not about you. Just about me.
Okay.
But that's what Zoloft is for, I've heard.
Okay. I gotta up your drip rate.
Medicinal marijuana? Anyone? I mean, we would never do any such thing on the radio that you know of, would we?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You're not agreeing fast enough. Well, anyway, tonight's topic is a depressing one.
Oh, dear.
Because we're going to talk about depression. And, as far as context is, if we want to put any context on this, as far as context is concerned, some of the work that you're doing with iThirst, which I think we've mentioned before, is about, of course, it's about addiction and about the effects of addiction on families and on the folks that are afflicted. Mm-hmm. But some of the reasons that people get into and become dependent upon substances, alcohol and or drugs, is because of various forms of depression. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, with the focus basically being on how. Let me say this, that I don't think I've ever suffered from any form of clinical depression. I feel very lucky and blessed that that's not happened. But you can see where under tremendous traumatic circumstances, which we have both gone through, tremendously traumatic circumstances in our lives together and in some of the things we've had to endure, you can see that under those circumstances, you could become depressed. Mm-hmm. And the discussion this evening is going to be about the fact that very often people will look at someone and miss those subtle signs of depression, because people can appear nearly normal. They can be very high functioning. They can get their jobs done. They can keep the bills paid. They can go about what appears to be a functional life, but they can be internally extremely depressed. Now, true debilitating clinical depression is not like that. When you have true clinical debilitating depression, you're often non-functional. You're often unable to deal with the day-to-day of everyday life. You are you're in a near, I wouldn't say catatonic, but you're certainly in a state where you're not looking to engage with the world. In fact, you're very much the opposite. You're trying to withdraw, and you're avoiding contact with people. You're pushing people away, and these interestingly enough, we're reading about this a little bit. Ran into some of the writings of Jordan Peterson, who's written actually extensively on various forms of depression. And he's basically talking about the fact that when depressives, when people get into these cycles of depression, they're sort of self-reinforcing. Mm. So you become depressed, you withdraw, you disengage from anything that you can, the people that you'll interact with, disengage from them, you disengage from your job, you disengage from activity, and then this makes you feel worse, and then the cycle of depression, clinical depression, can become sort of self-reinforcing and you have this he calls it a positive feedback loop. It's not positive in the sense that it's good for you, but in the I'm familiar with the electronic engineering positive feedback loop. And everybody really is. If you think about whenever you're in an auditorium and somebody has a positive feedback loop, you have this terrible ear-splitting howl. That's because the echoes are feeding back into the amplifier. Well, in this case, the depression is causing you to withdraw and to feel bad and to eschew anything which might help you, and which causes you to feel bad, which causes you to withdraw, which, so it builds upon itself, becomes a positive feedback loop, and you end up in these very deep, dark places. And that form of depression is a lot easier, perhaps, for somebody to recognize from the outside, and it may be easier for folks to, if not seek help, at least to be referred to someone for help, because you say, well, this person is obviously in a bad way. But that's not the type of depression we're talking about now. So you had more insight on this. Maybe you pick this thread up.
Well, it started off with what we were discussing last week, where someone we know had made this observation that when you worry about your future, you fall into an anxiety. But when you're very concerned about your past, you're focused in on your past and what could have been, you go into depression. And I was thinking about that in terms of how regret plays a part in that. Because it's always, well, what I could have done or what I could have been. And you almost have to grieve that letting go of possibility. It's well, what I could have accomplished.
Letting go of the expectation or of the idea that if only, that sort of thing.
Right, which is pretty much an illusion because it's a mental construct. It's not what had happened.
Right.
It's what you wish had happened, or maybe what you wish didn't happen, but what was. And just as worry is concern about what could happen.
Right.
It's not anything tangible. It is just projections, either forward or backward. And it's interesting because depression itself has, we develop coping skills to handle depression or to handle tendency to be in that kind of state, super critical. And I was reading an article that was describing habits that people have that may be a form of a chronic depression, just not brought to the fore. And it's habits that, as a society, we encourage. It's considered good, but the motivation behind it is always the question.
So this would technically be a subclinical depression.
So I don't know if you wanted me to begin to describe that, or
we're depressed already. You might as well.
Huh. Okay.
Go for it.
Go for it.
No, I think it's a good idea. I mean, it's a good jumping off point.
All righty. Well, this is for the people that can function, high-functioning depression, or they call it persistent depression disorder.
Okay.
And again, it's coping mechanisms, but it doesn't necessarily get to the core of what causes the depression or why it's happening, but it's a way that we handle it so that it's not as uncomfortable as it could be. So one of the ways some people handle this is extreme productivity. Busy, constantly busy, doing something, and you're so busy that the minute that you have nothing to do, you begin to panic.
Okay.
And the panicking is because the busyness was a way of you not focusing on the silence or the depression itself.
So you keep yourself occupied and distracted.
And distracted. Distraction, which is expressed as busyness. Another habit is to just continually say, I'm fine. And we have a tendency to do that just in general, to be polite, oh, how are you?
Right.
I'm fine.
Casual conversation.
But if it's always just the surface, I'm fine, it could be covering the fact that you're feeling the weight of the depression that you're carrying, and you just don't want to either go into it or you don't want to burden somebody else. It's like, no, I can handle it. I'm fine.
So this is under the guise of sparing someone else you're feeling bad, but you're like, no, I'm just going to cover that up. I'm going to push it down. I'm not going to let anybody know. I'm going to put on a happy face.
Right.
It's funny because this weird, these commercials they're always putting on for the drugs that are supposed to relieve your depression. They have one particular one where the woman or the person who's depressed has this sad expression, but then they have this little sign, like a happy face, that they hold up in front of their face. And the whole idea, very evocative, is that you're hiding your depression under this sort of a happy face. I'm fine, don't worry, I'm going to smile. And
the weight of the depression is still there.
Of course.
A third one is that you wind up sleeping a lot, more so than just getting a good night's sleep.
Right.
And it's being used as a way to avoid or escape the heaviness of the day.
Right.
You just look at the day and you're like,
Right. So you basically stay in bed. Now, you might say that true clinical depression can be somebody who never wants to get out of bed under any circumstances. They draw the shades. It's dark. The room's, they have no engagement with the world. This is not that. It might be on the way to that, but it's not that. But it's more along the lines of, when I'm asleep, I'm unconscious. I don't feel the pain. I don't feel the misery that I'm in. I'm away.
Right. The phrase I thought was interesting was they call it sleep as a time-traveling device.
Right, to kind of get to the next moment without passing through the moments in between.
Right.
So our cat is clinically depressed, I think.
Right.
Yeah, because she sleeps about 90 hours a day.
I think most cats do.
Well, there you go. Cats are clinically
Cats
depressed. They basically wake up to eat.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's about it.
Keep
And
the
if
body going.
A human being, though, in that state, not necessarily as bad as that, but if a human being is in the state where rather than face the intervening hours, they're just going to put their head down and go to sleep, and not for the purpose of the fact that they're tired, not for the purpose of the fact that they need the rest, or they need, everyone needs a certain amount of sleep. In this case, they're using, as you say, sleep as a device.
It's a coping mechanism. And then the concern over controlling things. And routine is usually used as a way of like organizing. But when it's a rigid routine, or you're organizing your space so meticulously, everything is thus and so, and nothing can move.
Right, so it's control, and it's also, almost the rigidity of the routine is a support mechanism. It's like it's almost like being busy all the time.
Yeah.
I must do X, Y, Z. On Tuesdays at 3:00, I have to do this. At Tuesdays at 3:17, I have to do this. And your whole day, every waking moment, is scheduled, is occupied by routine, and the routine can never vary. And if it does vary, it puts you completely into a panic. You have this panic attack if your routine
Right.
is in any way upset.
Interrupted in some way, because it's the idea of doing that is you're trying to create a sense of order in a mind that feels chaotic. So this is your structure, and any small detail where the routine's disrupted or the order is disrupted just brings you into an imbalanced state. You suddenly feel like you're in free fall. I can't control this. I'm back to the chaos. I thought I had this under control.
Right. So each one of these things individually, and there's more, but I just want to say that if you take each one of these things individually, they can be virtues. As you mentioned, society looks upon somebody who's busy, who's organized, who has a cheerful attitude all the time. I said, well, that's exactly what you want to be. You want to be somebody who's busy and productive. You want to be organized and have a routine, and you want to, be cheerful and show a happy face and all that stuff. And taken individually and taken, in proper measure, they are perfectly fine. So it's difficult to pierce through that and say, this person has a problem, because you say to yourself, well, they're not saying they have a problem. They're saying, in fact, I'm fine.
They seem to be coping.
But this is a very fragile form of coping.
Well, yes, it's not a grounded state where you're there. It is constantly engaging the mind in a certain way as avoidance of engaging into what the core issue is.
So they're anything but present.
Yes, these are all the ways not to be present. When you think about it, it's like, yes, when you're overly concerned with controlling a situation, you're usually not present.
True. Oh my.
Excuse me.
That's right, I'm not depressed about it.
Okay. And it's interesting to see the avoidance mechanisms so that you're not in the present moment where you're comfortable in the stillness of things.
Right.
It is always looking away instead of looking directly at what the concern is.
So this is an interesting point, if I might digress for a moment, is a truly present person, someone who has true presence, stillness is welcomed. It's actually something that you're trying to cultivate internally.
Right.
And then if you have an external environment of stillness, sitting on the beach and looking out over the waves at daybreak, or sitting in a beautiful glade as the sunlight filters down from above, and all you hear are forest sounds, birds, etc. And the seaside, all you hear is the waves crashing upon the shore, or you maybe when you're sitting alone at night near the water, and you hear the breeze or you hear the waves. And this is a certain form of stillness, which in the case of somebody who's subclinically depressed, they're literally trying to avoid. If you put them in that situation where they have to be still and therefore be present and therefore have to deal with their actual internal state, they're instantly going to try and use one or more of these coping mechanisms. Oh, well, I can't stay here more than 2 minutes because now I have to go shop. I can't stay here more than 2 minutes. Now I have to go to do this particular chore, this particular errand. Or I've got, 5 meetings and, the next one's in 2 minutes and the next one after that's 25 minutes from there. Just no form of, no experience of stillness and presence, and therefore, in essence, allowing their inner state to become, aware, the awareness of the inner state to come to the fore, which is what that presence mindset is all about. If you do that to someone who's subclinically depressed, this is not a comfortable thing, because that allows no space between their true inner state, which, as you mentioned, was chaotic, and this, this shield, if you will, of busyness, or this shield of saying I'm fine, or this shield of saying, I've got this particular task to do, or this particular part of my routine that has to happen now. All those things take you completely out of presence. They're all egoic things too, interestingly enough.
Yeah, you're again, it's an avoidance of being right there, because you're not comfortable with yourself being there just by yourself. So it's just recognition of this, bringing that into your awareness, that you may be avoiding something. Maybe you already know that you're avoiding something. And you're just trying to, I'd rather not, I don't want to think about that.
I mean, we should maybe bring our quote in at some point here, but the some of the other things I read, maybe you read the same, are that some of the roots of depression, once you can be in a clinically depressed state and people will notice, or you can be in a subclinically depressed state and people will, maybe they'll sense something is off, but you are actively engaged in denying that, denying that out loud and to them.
I'm fine.
No, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. Everything's fine. So in this subclinical state where you're denying the depression, you're also refusing to explore the roots of it. And oftentimes, certainly in the case of addicts or people who abuse various substances, whether they're addicted or not, oftentimes this is trying to escape from pain. Some sort of psychic pain, some sort of trauma in the past, some sort of
bad memories.
Bad memories, exactly. Or even a present situation which brings you a lot of pain and grief and turmoil. And you've just decided to encapsulate that, to numb yourself to it, to push it away, almost in the same way. This is a physical analog, so it's not quite perfect. So probably everybody's had this experience, or at least I've had this experience. You get injured. Something happens. You may break a bone. You may get a cut of some kind. It may be kind of serious, something that happens to you rather suddenly and seriously. And if you'll notice, very often, the very first reaction people say when they get injured badly is that they don't feel anything. The part of you which is injured almost goes numb. If you get a bad burn, you're like, wow, that's going to hurt later, but you don't feel it at the moment.
Right.
So this mechanism is tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years of survival. It's a survival mechanism that the body uses when debilitating injury happens that would otherwise cause you to stop, to not run, to not be able to fight back, to not be able to survive because you're overwhelmed by having to deal with this injury. The brain literally short circuits that. It literally says, this is such a severe amount of trauma that if I let the body deal with it right now in these exigent circumstances, that we're going to die. That we're not going to survive this problem. So it just blocks that. Now the whole sensation goes numb. People have this experience in very bad accidents and so on. They just don't feel anything. Of course, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel the broken bone later. You're going to feel whatever the cut or the trauma is later. But in the absolute moment, what overrides all of that is you have to survive. Okay, so in the brain, we have this mechanism where it's the nerve endings that are sending this gigantic impulse of pain, and the brain just says, no, sorry. But in the psychological form, this tremendous trauma, this tremendous pain, whatever it is, could be so debilitating that it might overwhelm you, might not allow you to react, to continue, to survive. And so the brain does a very similar thing. It kind of numbs that area, kind of actively encapsulates it and makes it so that you can't feel it. Well, you can't feel it, yeah, but you can't deal with it either. And with the body, there's sort of a mechanism, after some time, you start to feel it. You say, wow, that really hurts. Or this, now the instantaneous shock of the injury is over. Now I have to have this treated. Now this something has to be done here.
You have to do something now.
The brain is more insidious and subtle than that. It can keep these sort of things bottled up, in essence, forever. For as long as you're willing to pay that price, I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to deal with it. I'm going to just ignore it. I'm going to numb it. I'm not going to, yeah, sure. But it's always there. And it's taking away many things from you, taking away your presence, taking away your ability to feel other things, real things that are happening in the present moment. You can't feel them. And it certainly is either a clinical or, in the worst cases, or a subclinical block on your emotions, block on your ability to be a fully functional human being, because there's this giant ball of I can't touch this sort of in the center of the room. It's the literal elephant in the room. You can't go there.
Yeah. There's a lot of fear involved.
Fear, yeah.
And emotions in general, a lot of emotions, and many people have not the skills to handle their emotions, especially when it's traumatic. You have to decide that you're going to handle it, which is not easy, but for your own peace of mind. Peace of mind has got to be a goal at that point.
Well, I think, forgive me, but I think the work you were doing, this is some time back now, with the children, so early life training, when children are exposed to all kinds of things. Somebody takes your toy or somebody pushes over your blocks, and this is a tremendous, horrible, life-changing event. It's a lot of trauma.
It is.
And you're enraged, or you're very sad, and you want this thing to be restored. You want it to be made better again. And so this all rushes up, and it can be debilitating. And what is the right thing to do if you were the adult training the child in that situation is you teach them, yes, you're feeling this now. So now you put it to the realm of feeling. And this practice of learning that you are feeling something, that you aren't angry, but you're feeling angry, that you're not sad, but you're feeling sad. And then I think you guys had a very interesting mechanism to allow the children, for practice in this case, not that they knew that, but this is the practice, is that you learn to identify the emotion. What is it? Whether, and they were using either pictures or they were using colors or whatever. If I'm red, if I'm blue, or if I'm yellow, or whatever it is.
Yeah, emojis were good.
Emojis. And then you say, now you can identify that feeling. You say, I am feeling X. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling sad. And then you would train them to say, well, now give yourself some space. Let that come up and fill up this giant cup or this giant lake or this giant ocean or whatever it is. Let the emotion come up. Say, this is what it is. I'm feeling this, and it's filling up the cup. It's filling up the pool. It's filling up the lake. It's full to the brim with this terrible emotion, whatever it is. And you just sit there and you look at it. So there's this giant lake of fear or this giant ocean of anger. Great. But you've done such a beautiful job in that case of doing two very important things. You're saying, well, yes, here's the emotion. What is it? It's not who you are. It's not what you are. It's what is this emotion? Well, I feel this, so I feel angry. We've identified it. It automatically says, here's you, here's your consciousness, and within you, in a space inside you, maybe you haven't identified yet, but a space inside you is this thing, this emotion. And then you very properly told the children, practice letting it come up, letting it fill you, seeing it filling up this space, but still it's not overwhelming you. It's not outside of you. It's not all around you. You're not lost in the ocean. You're just holding the ocean. And then you watch it drain away. And this practice taught at that age, at 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever it is so valuable, because now in life, in teenage years or later on or any time, this practice of allowing, emotion is going to come. You feel heartbroken because somebody left you. You feel tremendous life-altering grief because somebody you loved died, or somebody you loved is in terrible danger and terrible sickness, whatever it is. But you don't say, I am angry, I am afraid. No, you say, I feel afraid, I feel angry, I feel lost, I feel whatever it is. And you let it well up within you. You see it coming up. And you say, wow, this is really hard. This is really difficult. But you've contained it in the sense that you are able to not be that thing.
Well, what you're doing is allowing it to flow.
Yeah. Right. It doesn't get bottled up.
Right. You may be filling the container, but you have to understand that it's flowing. It's not contained in one spot.
Or is it screwed together very, very tight, like a giant bomb that it's under tremendous pressure?
Right. See, we don't use the word container because that implies holding it.
Right.
The whole idea of an emotion is that it must flow through you.
Right.
So if you can look at the emotion and give it a color, if you want to give it a color, and then begin to see it as a water form. In other words, it flows. So I want the toy. And I feel, what would be the word? It's not just anger, but it's like, disappointed. That would be the better term.
Angry and sad at the same time.
I couldn't get to play with it now. But it doesn't mean that you won't be able to play with it next.
Mm.
It's giving that kind of, because children are always in the moment of now. And for them, because they can't play with it now, is devastating.
The end of the world.
But when you introduce the concept of, well, you're next. Oh, you mean I'll get to play with it? It's like, yeah. And then you have to do the negotiation of, because they'll go right over to the other child who has it at present and say, I'm next, give it to me.
I'm next now.
Mm-hmm. And you say, no, he's not done with it yet.
Right.
So there's so many things that you're teaching a young mind at that point that it can feel devastating, because like suddenly you got to share. Sharing?
Well,
sharing is a concept, especially if they didn't have anybody they had to share with at home.
well, exactly. You're training that, but this training at that age, and there's so many things they're learning. Sharing is another one, but that training of as you say, identifying what is it that I'm feeling right now. It's not a mystery anymore. It's something that they can put a name to, or a color to, or a picture to.
Right, because there are children that need to just sit with this. It's like, I feel this way. And they have to disentangle the myriad of emotions that they're sequencing through. And some of the kids just ball it all up into one mess and say, I'm unhappy, and that's it.
Mm.
And you're actually sitting there going, no, you're feeling a whole bunch of different things. How do you feel? Disappointed that you couldn't get it immediately. You're feeling impatient.
Mm.
You're feeling sad because you don't like waiting.
Right.
You feel, so you
Or
go through
angry.
these, there's a whole string of human experience right there.
But what you're not doing, so you do this exercise. I just want to bring it forward. If you teach that at that age, what you're not doing is bowling it all up. And as you said, putting a cap on it and making it something that, well, I'm never going to talk to little Johnny or little Susie again because they had the toy and I wanted the toy and they wouldn't give me the toy. And so that's it. We're done. I'll never talk to them. I'll never think about it again. That toy, you see this with children. Mm-hmm. Well, they'll say, if I can't have the toy, then when you give it to them, they throw it away. Because that toy is not, that they haven't processed the anger. They haven't processed the disappointment. What it is now it's something that's dead to them. That expression, you're dead to me. This thing is now, it's no longer a toy. It's now become an obstacle. It's become something which represents pain. It represents anger. It represents something it represents something that I couldn't have. And even if I can have it now, I don't want it. Because I haven't even gotten to the point where I can understand what was going on. It's just a painful thing that I'm going to become numb to.
Well, if they do that, then they've identified that with pain, whatever the toy was.
Exactly.
And that's not what we're aiming for. Usually kids will wait.
Right.
They will wait because they know that there's fun over the horizon.
Well,
like any human being.
Sure.
There's something good. Hope. There's hope for something fun on the horizon.
What you've done gets them there. But let's say this hasn't happened to this person. That in essence, the negative reinforcement is somebody can't get the toy, and they, instead of having that ability to train that emotion and identify it and understand that it's yours next, no, it becomes you can't have that. You go to your room. You're acting up. You get in, and that whole experience becomes just a pain point. That whole experience becomes confusion. It becomes now the toy is associated with something far larger, far worse. And yes, in this analogy, which breaks down after time of a toy, but if you haven't learned at that stage, you don't become trained in that stage, and you go on to much worse things. Much more serious disappointments, much more traumatic circumstances in later life, and your only coping mechanism is to ball them up, become dead to them, make them something that's a numb thing I never want to deal with again. Yes, then you're working yourself towards either a subclinical depression, because you can never get into these things. We've talked about this many times, where you fragment yourself with traumas, or you fragment yourself with pain, and so these, and this is Tolle, of course, these become the pain body. These become this portion of you, this egoic, painful, never to be touched again except through this, aegis of pain portion of you that can take over, can run through your relationships, can come out screaming and ranting and raving if it's triggered in the wrong way, or if you completely ball it up, you never touch it again, it's completely encapsulated, but it still has captured a vast amount of energy, a vast amount of your presence is walled up behind there that you can't ever touch or never want to see again. But it's still you. You've segregated a portion of your spirit, of your soul, of yourself, your life force. And so the depression is that, I can never come to grips with that. Now I'm fine all the time because I can't touch this portion of me that has this terrible pain within it. I'm busy, so that I never have to try to be still enough to look into this dark corner, this dark fragment.
Well, where I've shoved the dark fragment so I don't see it again.
Never see it again. And, this is imperfect, of course, so you are triggered. Something comes in, something breaks through, something pierces this container for an instant, and there's so much pain and so much pressure and so much trauma in there that it bursts forth, takes over your current present moment, with all that past anger, or all that past fear, whatever the emotion was, comes roaring out through your actions, comes roaring out through your mouth, and people say, "Well, gosh, what happened? All I said was, something relatively innocent," and this person who was busy with a routine and always happy suddenly is a raving lunatic. Well,
they lost it.
And then if you do that a few more times and you get those negative reinforcements, and you say, "Well, I'm just going to drink all the time because then I'm always fine. Everyone loves me when I'm drinking, or when I'm doing substances, or when I'm whatever the coping mechanism is." And the addictions could be gambling, could be all kinds of things, sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever it is. But in truth, anything can become that mechanism of keeping at bay this terrible monster, this thing that you're trying to keep under wraps, which is just you. But it's a you that you don't want to deal with.
It's a you that you don't even want to accept.
Right.
Which is interesting, because you believe somehow that you can pick and choose the qualities that you have, the character that you have. You can reinforce character. You can try to learn new character. But to deny that this is the truth of you, that's when you begin to fragment yourself. Because you believe that you are perfectly in your rights to punish yourself.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, if there's anybody who should be able to decide whether or not I need punishment, it's me. And the truth of the matter is, you really don't have the full picture. You have the picture according to your perspective. But an experience, an interaction, has more than one viewpoint. And you have to make room for the fact that, you know what? What was it that other people were seeing, and what has actually happened? What is the truth of this moment?
Well, that's the, that's the is that so? But you have to have the presence to do that. And
yes.
Yeah.
You have to have enough space within yourself to allow for differences, even within yourself.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where therapy can come in. You know what? I don't want to, before we get too far beyond it, because we've gone into a good space here, but I don't want to ignore our quote. This is not a quote that's attributed to anyone, but I thought it was very appropriate, and I thought you also thought it was short and sweet, which I thought was good too. So if you wouldn't mind putting up our quote.
Oh, sure. Depression is living in a body that fights to survive with a mind that tries to die.
And that, that kind of sums up what we've been talking about to a great extent. It's an interesting way to put it into perspective, the body versus the mind. But in some ways it is. Depression is the body versus the mind. The body, depression reflects into the body. Is as much of what happens within the mind reflects into the body. When this is just a slight digression, but I want to just say that Tolle often talks about the fact that when you're imagining, let's say you're imagining something that could go wrong, so you're living in the future, you have anxiety, that the body has no mechanism to distinguish between an actual thing that's happening right now or something that you're just imagining might happen right now. So if you're imagining that this terrible thing's going to happen, that all these horrible things are going to happen to me, and then I'll say this and they'll say that, and then I'll be this and I'll be all that stress reaction, all those cortisols that are flowing into your body, all the stress hormones, all the vagus nerve raising your blood pressure and raising your heart rate and getting your breath going. All of that will happen.
That's the amygdala.
The amygdala, the emotion center, but all that will happen regardless of the actual reality of the threat, because the body has no way of distinguishing what you imagine from what is actually happening. Similarly, if you're living in the past and you're bringing up past traumas, past sadnesses, past regrets, the body will release the hormones which are associated with sadness and with depression, with grief, with all the things that these emotions of loss and these emotions of pain and loss that go together. So the effect on the body is direct. So the body is trying to, as it often is wont to do, it is trying to survive. It's trying to get you to the next day. It's trying to heal your wounds. It's trying to make sure you eat, make sure you drink enough, giving you all the promptings, you're thirsty, you're hungry, you're tired. Do those things, because those things are the drumbeat of survival. You got to eat. You got to do all the things that keep you alive every day. The body will remind you. The mind has a role to play here as well. But if the mind is constantly dwelling on this pain, this numbness, this depression, whether it's clinical or subclinical, the body will have those stressors. If you're continually saying you're fine, but you're not, the body knows you're not. If you're continually busy, then you're constantly under stress, and the stress hormones and the effect on your blood pressure and on your on your arterial wall health and the what happens in your actual gut and in your actual physiological systems, with all these stress hormones, your kidneys are going, your guts are churning, blah, 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 all this stuff. These diseases of stress come from subclinical depression, from the mind dwelling upon this pain and not allowing the body to relax, to rest, to actually be in the moment of now, because the mind is dragging it all over the place. So this idea of fighting, of disharmony between the physiological and the pain body and the mental, this isn't presence, this isn't consciousness, this is truly pain body versus physical, or physical versus pain body. When you drag up old hurts and old angers and old fears, the fear hormones release, the anger stress hormones release, the cortisol releases, everything is in there in your body doing what should be a reaction, a brief thing to help you survive. No. Now it's a chronic thing which tears you down.
So what you're saying is the pain body is a mind pattern.
Yeah.
Because pain body and body, you would think.
Right. I don't want to confuse the two. The pain body is an egoic mind creation. What Tolle calls a pain body is something which you imagine, in essence. You have...
It's patterning that is projected. It's not necessarily imagined. It is definitely there as a solid pattern.
Imagination is too weak a word.
Yeah.
It exists. It has its own its own life, if you will.
Right. But in this particular quote, the body that fights to survive, and it's dealing with a mind that tries to die. In other words, that pain body is trying to keep you from living. And it's living life, not suicide. Although the amount of pain that people go through can drive them there.
It can. As we mentioned earlier, what you're doing with iThirst is largely because people's coping mechanisms, let's say I'm fine, isn't working. Now they're using a particular substance or a particular routine like gambling or something to make themselves feel fine,
Yeah, process addiction. I think a lot of this that we're talking about is what are considered normal habits can be looked on as possible extensions into process addiction.
Yeah.
Going back to that, another habit or characteristic of people who are in the high-functioning depression is having constant background noise. Stillness, they can't have stillness or quiet. Because the silence allows for intrusive thoughts to come in, thoughts of low self-worth, and or the emptiness that happens to be in that silent moment. And they don't want the emptiness. They push it away. They're keeping it at bay. There's a lot of layers to that experience.
So this is, therapy would say you need that introspection, but this is so at that point in where they are right now, that silence feels like a threat. It feels like it's going to somehow break them apart. It's going to release all this pain, and so you have to keep, whatever chaos that you feel comforting. You feel comfort in this constant noise, this constant activity, perhaps,
it's literally background noise.
Background noise, right?
Yeah, literally, you have to have something going. I remember when we were in Memorial Sloan Kettering, and our roommate was a little toddler with her mom, and her mom would not stop talking.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me, when it's just me, I just continually talk. She talks to herself.
Right.
Out loud.
Right.
At volume.
Right.
And I went, okay.
Well, and you probably know people like that. There's people who literally they're talking to themselves, sometimes out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Almost.
Continually.
You say, well, this person seems to have a problem, but the true problem is that if they ever stopped talking, that the silence would trigger all that hurt and pain and trauma that they're trying. So this constant speaking about what's happening, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this. It's a way of keeping the demons, if you will, their internal demons at bay. Mm-hmm. And yes, it sounds insane. And in some ways, though, it's their coping mechanism. It's keeping them, quote, from going really insane.
Right. This is the only thing keeping them from losing all hold on reality.
Right. Or, running around screaming and chewing holes in the rug.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, none of these things. Okay, let's be careful here. None of these things are good. None of the substance abuses. None of the constant busyness. None of this. None of the denial. None of the constant self-talk. None of it works.
Right. If you do it exclusively, these are just indicators.
Right.
Okay. These are coping mechanisms that you can use. But if it's a, how do I say this? It's just pointing at it, saying, examine why this is happening, before it goes deeper, before it becomes a real habitual.
Well, this is a good thing. We don't have a lot of time, but I just want to say that can people take something away here and say, if I see these things in others or I see them in myself, somebody who's constantly saying I'm fine, you can't immediately jump to a diagnosis.
Right. No, it has nothing. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other indicators here that I haven't even touched.
Oh,
but
it's a big subject.
It's a big subject, and it's just, you look at that and you go, well, am I doing this? So I don't know. Maybe we should do part 2 on this.
Part 2 of subclinical depression.
It's a huge
subject. But in fact, you have to be wary because all, as we mentioned earlier, and things that Margaret hasn't even brought up, all these things are potentially just fine. It's just this is the person who you're dealing with. But taken in aggregate, you can start to say, well, maybe there's really a problem here. And you have, there's famous examples of people, Robin Williams and so on, who externally look fine. They look just fine. They're like, they're always making everyone laugh. But inside they're very depressed. Yes, I think the depressing thing is we're at the end of the show at this point.
Yes, we are.
Well.
So I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael. And you're just going to have to deal.
And thank you for listening.